Hello, masters of the Aaliyah Mystery School. I am so happy to have you here for your first official curriculum video. So if you haven't already done so, please go back and watch the initiation video and the orientation video, as those have all the nuts and bolts of how the school is going to work and just very important information. So if you haven't already watched those, please go do that first. Second note, the next 6 videos that you're going to be watching in this school are all about the self. So this is going to be our introduction to the self. Yes, we're going to deep dive into quite a bit of what the self is, why we feel so separated, why that feels so bad, and all of these things. What self-love truly is, and why being present with ourselves is so important. We're gonna cover a lot in the next 6 videos. That being said, I did shoot them before I was consciously aware that I was going to be moving this to the Aaliyah Mystery School, so you'll just have to forgive the intro and the outro because I presented them like I was going to put them on the Perception Trainers YouTube channel, but we are not going to put them there. We're going to have them here. So just a little admin note on that one. Just ignore the intro and the outro on the next 6 videos, and from there, all of the rest of the videos will be addressed to you, the Aaliyah Mystery School students. All right, so in this video, I want to explain why I'm going to take such a deep dive into the self, being the first videos that you're going to get in this curriculum, all right? So the reason that we are going to take such a deep exploration of what the self is because this is foundational information for self-love, for ascension, for awakening, for any of the ending of the suffering that we want to end within ourselves so that we can live our fullest lives, all right? And I know that in the spiritual communities and in the self-help communities, especially in the, the meditative and the more advanced spiritual communities, there's so much talk about the self not existing and that we are completely universal and that the self is a projection or an illusion, all right? And I really wanted to dive deeply into why we need to evolve that way of thinking. Because if we're gonna get caught in the self doesn't exist, or the self is an illusion, or I can't find myself, or I don't exist, then none of this is gonna make any sense, all right? So that's the first thing. In order to have this awakening experience, we're gonna have to come to terms with the fact that it's only going to happen through our individual relative experience. There is nothing that you can do in this life outside of your relative experience. You cannot get out of your physical body. You cannot get out of your own perception. And this is not actually a limit on you. And this is what we're going to explore and talk about in the next 6 videos. This doesn't limit you, all right? But so long as we're coming in with this idea that the self is what's limiting us, that we are somehow needing to transcend who and what we are, needing to transcend the experiences that we have had, needing to change ourselves fundamentally in order to be our highest self or any of these awesome things that we want to be, we're going to get stuck in a cul-de-sac. All right? So this information about the self and the breakdown of the self and how the self works and why the self is the key to ascension, why you being a singularity relative you is exactly how you're evolving, exactly why you're evolving, exactly the whole linchpin key to God expanding itself. When you understand this, everything else is going to make so much sense, okay? But if we're going to resist that and we're going to fight against this idea that the self exists and all this, we're going to struggle, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that on the flip side of the spiritual communities and the self-help communities wanting to say that the self doesn't exist, we have the opposite, which is to say that the self is all that exists, in the sense that we are simply projecting reality from our own minds, and anything that we are thinking or believing is what the reality is. It's all just a projection of me. Yes? There is no structure, there is no form, it's all nothing until I decide it's something. Yeah? So going from the self doesn't exist, we're all completely united, it's one consciousness, to it is the individual consciousness, and only the individual consciousness that creates all that is. And this is also not the full truth. Okay? So if we're going to be on that side of things, usually it's because we are rejecting or wanting to rebel from the natural universal laws that exist and the natural universal structure that is who and what we are. All right? So we're wanting to get into this place of saying, you know, both of these two perspectives are essentially saying human life got it wrong. That there's something wrong here in the fact that we are separated and that there's structure and that there's individual nature, and that because of that structure and because of that individual nature, we are limited. And we are disconnected and we are separated. These are the two essentially big keys of why we struggle with being a self so much, is that we perceive being a self as being the reason we feel disconnected from everyone and everything. And we perceive being the self as being the reason why we are limited in what we can and cannot do, can and cannot have, and can and cannot be. And so on both sides of the self coin, we're either just trying to pretend that the self doesn't exist at all so we can go into limitlessness, or we're trying to pretend that it is the self that creates everything. So therefore we can go into limitlessness so long as we can transcend this idea of limitation within the self. And so like I say, both of these things are trying to get rid of structure, trying to get rid of law, trying to get rid of the apparent and inherent structure of reality, because we believe it is what is causing us our pain. We believe it is what is causing us to suffer. And this is the big foundational misunderstanding that, again, I think is what cul-de-sacs every spiritual person on their path. It seems to be the big sticking point that keeps everyone from getting beyond a certain level. Yeah? We have so many people in the spiritual world and in the self-help world and all these places, right, where they have reached a certain level of consciousness, where they seem so profound, and it seems so amazing, and it just seems like, wow, their perspective is so huge, and they understand so many things, and it makes so much sense. But you can feel inside yourself that there's like a sticking something. Like it's not quite right. They're not quite ascending. There's always something that you're like, well, but what about this? Like, right? Like a lot of the spiritual people who ignore diet and ignore their bodies. Like literally, there's this huge movement of just like completely ignoring the physical reality at all. And you know, this is actually not traditional in any way. Pretty much every traditional religious and spiritual practice and tradition absolutely makes room for the physical being a huge part of this. And so this kind of new age movement that we're in, where we're essentially trying to completely deny the physical reality, we're really trying to like pretend again like it's either an illusion or it's all just a projection, there is no structure to it. There's no structure to it. It either doesn't exist at all or it's just a projection of my mind. Again, this is actually a step backwards. This is not a step forward in consciousness to deny the physical reality as having any kind of truth to it. But again, this is a rejection of reality. This is a rejection of what is. This is saying, okay, well, the physical thing clearly exists, but no, it doesn't. Because it's not operating the way that I want it to operate. It's not doing the things that I think it should do. It's not doing what I believe would be correct. And so I'm going to reject it, right? Just like we always do. And this is what gets us into our cul-de-sacs. This is what stops us from moving forward. This is what is the clincher here. So the biggest key that I really want you to take from this, and I'm hoping that you're going to watch these self videos over and over and over again, and especially this one and the last one, because we really need to start wrapping our minds around the idea that nothing has gone wrong. There is no mistake. there is no, that reality didn't get it wrong, right? That you being a self isn't wrong. That you having a physical self isn't wrong. That the structure and nature of reality isn't what's limiting you from having what you want. And we need to start to catch ourselves in the behaviors and the thought patterns that are rooted in this. Yes, that the self is a mistake and that the reality is a mistake. And this is essentially all that awakening really is. It's coming to terms with that which exists. It's not even just coming to terms with it, but it's coming to terms with it so deeply that you are an active participant in the expansion of it. All right? And we're going to get into all of this. We're going to get into what is true life generation, and we're going to get into exactly how the structure is not limiting us, but actually is the reason we have any potential to do anything. Why the self is not what is limiting us, but it is what gives us the potential to do anything. And why we are so resistant to being with ourselves and to loving ourselves. And so the next thing that I really want to make clear here is that there's nothing new about rejecting the self. There's nothing new or revolutionary or spiritual or true about rejecting the self. And we have created in society a secular and a conscious religious community. Two of these communities, the secular community and the religious communities, that are both doing the exact same frickin' thing. And we're not realizing it, right? The secular world, the matrix, the way the non-spiritual people, whatever you want to call them, are living their lives to reject themselves, right? They're rejecting their individuality. They're rejecting what makes them different because they want to fit in. They want to feel connected to the whole. They want to feel like they're a part of the group. They don't want to feel rejected. They want to feel connected. They're trying to get back to the womb, and we're going to talk about this in the next video. Everyone's trying to get back to the womb. Everyone's trying to get back to the void. Everyone's trying to get back to where we were all connected. There was no separation. So the secular people are doing it by trying to fit into culture. Yeah? By working a job that's right and doing the things that culture dictates, being who your parents think you should be, being who your society thinks you should be, being on trend, caring about all these things, working so hard to be a normal person. Don't be weird, don't be out of alignment, just be normal. Yeah? That's what the secular people are doing. The spiritual people are doing the same thing, essentially. They're trying to be what the spiritual community wants them to be, right? We're all rejecting ourselves so that we can be whatever the New Age community or the Christian community or the Buddhist community thinks we should be. We're all still trying on some level to reject the physicality, to reject reality, to reject the secular people. We're still trying to get rid of things, rejecting the self. Again, thinking that at some point, if I just reject the self enough, I'm going to transcend. And what do we want? What is actually transcendence? What are we trying to transcend to? Universal perspective where we feel connected. So both the secular and the religious are doing the same thing. We're both trying to get rid of who and what we are, who and what the structure of reality is, so that we can feel connected. We can feel like we're back in the womb. We can feel like we're back in oneness. Everyone's doing the same thing. So it doesn't matter if it's frickin' Eckhart Tolle telling you this or the drunk on the street telling you this. If anyone is telling you that you don't exist or that you need to change something about yourself fundamentally so that you can feel what you want to feel, so that you can have what you want to have, so that you can be what you want to be, it's not new. That's not a revelation. That's not an expansion. That is the same shit that we've been doing forever that keeps everyone stuck. All right? So this is why this is so key, right? We are so conditioned to reject ourselves that we don't even see when we're doing it anymore. We all believe that there's something about us that needs to be rejected. And truly, even when we're on this self-love path and we think we've been on this path for years and we've been doing this for years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. I so get it. Except for this. Except for this part of me is bad, right? And it's all the things. And I'm just going to say this right now, and this will be something we talk about a lot, okay? The thing that takes us down or that blocks us from continuing on to find joy, peace, happiness, love, connection, ascension, whatever you want to call it, the thing that blocks us is never a little thing. It's never a detail. It's never a little oversight. It's always going to be that big frickin' blaring thing that's the giant white elephant in the room that you're not willing to look at. All right? It's always going to be the big blaring right here in your face every single day you're fighting with it. You are just so convinced that this is not a part that is a part of divinity, that this is not a part that can be accepted. This is destructive. This is terrible. Your eating disorder, my eating disorder, my drug addiction, my alcoholism, my terrible relationship patterns, my that, my anger, my judgment, my frustration, my feeling alone. We all have the thing that's like, but this is the thing that I cannot love. This is the thing that I should not love, because if I love this, it's going to take over my life, right? I would be giving myself permission to be this, and this cannot be divine. And this is what creates all that internal separation, and I'm going to wrap this up after all of these videos in the final video, the wrap-up video. But you need to start recognizing this in yourself. You need to start seeing where you are getting caught up in rejection of self and justifying it, right? This clearly it's fine to reject this part of myself, this eating disorder, this addiction, this relationship problem, because it's bad. It's giving me bad results. It's killing me. It's hurting me. I don't like it. Clearly I cannot love this. Clearly I cannot accept this. This part of me that's judgmental, this part of me that wants to get rid of parts of me, right? We believe our own lies so deeply because it doesn't matter where you turn in the world. Culture tells you to reject yourself. Religion tells you to reject yourself. Spirituality tells you to reject yourself. It's all the same message. There's no difference. Nothing is new. Nothing is special. No one is saying anything different. It's all the same shit. And this is why we need to be masters. You cannot look outside to the religious communities, to the spiritual communities, to the secular community. You can't find any community right now out there other than this one, and there might be other ones out there, I'm not sure, I just haven't seen them, where they're truly getting this, that this self-love practice is so radical. It's over the top, right? It's not, I love all the parts of myself that are great, and I'm trying to fix the parts of myself that aren't, that don't fit into the religious, the spiritual, the cultural, whatever thing, box that I'm supposed to fit into. That's all we're all doing, right? All the Buddhists are still trying to get rid of all the parts of themselves that are not Buddhist. All the Christians are still trying to get rid of the parts of themselves that are not Christian. All the New Agers are trying to get rid of themselves that are not New Age. All the positive thought people are trying to get rid of the parts of themselves that are not positive thought. All the bankers are trying to get rid of themselves that are part of themselves that are not bankers, right? We're all still looking for our identity in this thing. This is what it is. And then anything that's outside of that is wrong. Yes, we're trying to be the same as something because we're trying to find that community. We're trying to find that connection. And after these videos, you're going to understand why that is completely never going to work. That is the reason we feel disconnected. It is through self-rejection that we feel disconnected. It is through true self-love where you accept and love and embrace every aspect of yourself, leaving no part of yourself out of this, including the parts of yourself that want to leave parts of yourself out of this, that you will find it. All right? So this is our introduction to the self. This is our introduction to the mystery school itself, because this is the foundation. Without this, nothing's going to work. Without this, we're going to be in a cul-de-sac. Without understanding the self, why self-love is everything, and how to actually do self-love in this radical way, right? This is not for everyone. This is radical self-love for masters who are awakening. Without this, we are caught in a loop. We're just doing what everyone else is doing. We may have, great Kundalini rising experiences and see a lot of things and know a lot of things, but ultimately, we're going to suffer. We're going to stay stuck in suffering, and we're going to kill ourselves. That's what this is going to do, right? The rejection of self is to kill yourself. So if we want to ascend, we can't kill ourselves. All right? So just hold on. We're going to do these next 6 videos, and then we're going to get into deep truth counseling. Okay.